everyone. Welcome back to the Growth Playbook with myself, host Kimberly Clark and Alan Bolio. Today's episode, we're going to dive right into discussing the big, beautiful bill and all of that, what that could potentially mean for businesses as economic activity may be impacted. And from Alan's expert economist background, being able to see through the noise of the headlines, look clear into the data, and unbiasedly be able to talk through the potential impact to these different classes and such. So looking forward to today's conversation, Dad. And let's just jump in and get started.
All right, daughter, let's do that. Like with a lot of things, this bill, it is big and it is beautiful to some, it'll be ugly to others, but overall it's mixed. Like everything else coming out of Washington, right? There's things that are like, wow, that's really cool and insightful, and other things like, what on earth are you thinking? But we'll go through some of that. We're going to definitely see that there are some benefits to some businesses that you may be working with now and that we have worked with together in the past, or people we don't know. But there's definitely a windfall here for some businesses. And there's some windfall here for people, individuals too. So we're going to talk through that, and I'm not going to try to make this all negative because there's no reason to make it all negative. For instance, let's start with the fact that tips. The first $25,000 of earnings in tips will now be tax deductible. Now, if you're living off of tips, that's a big deal. And if you're in a 20% tax bracket, that just saves you 20% of $25,000, $5,000 you don't not paying. Now, a lot of times, if you're in the tips, you're in the 15% tax level. You may be in a non-taxable level because of other reasons. But if you are being taxed, this just helped you. There's no way that it does not. Now, I've done the computation for what a uh, food server does, how they might do in Disney, just for fun. At what's that one with the Beauty and the Beast? And my estimation is that they're probably easily pulling in $100,000 in tips. So the first 25,000 being tax deductible means something to them too, because it reduces the tax bite. And reducing the tax bite is good for the economy because they'll go out and spend it on other things, and it helps to spur economic activity. The downside, there aren't all that many people that live off of tips, so it's one of those things, and a lot of that money's under the table to begin with. So, we'll see how that all plays out. But on the surface, it's nice. The other thing I like, and I do like it, is that the overtime pay, the first $12,500 of overtime pay is now going to be tax deductible. So you're not going to pay tax on it. And for folks that are, again, lower income, getting that overtime money without tax put on it really is a boost, really is a positive. There is a limit on that. It's $150,000 per individual, $300,000 for a joint filing. If you make more than 150 or 300,000, you don't get the deduction, which again is reasonable, and it doesn't favor the wealthy that way. So thumbs up. Good job. They're not game changers, but not everything is going to be, but it does make life better for some individuals without a great large cost to the rest of us. So it's like, okay. And let's give points for that. The standard deduction is going up some, so that's good for everybody that, whether you itemize or not. So that's pretty small. One of the big things, and this only lasts, I think, through 2028, maybe it's 2029. No, it goes back only through 28, is the standard, it's the SALT deductions, state and local taxes. So if you were to live in California or Arizona or someplace where there's a sales tax on everything, Maine, Connecticut, most states do, those sales taxes now would become tax deductible again. If you have let's say here in New Hampshire, where we have high personal property taxes, that limit was $10,000. A lot of people in New Hampshire pay more than $10,000. So all of a sudden, the whole thing is going to be deductible up to $40,000.
That's
And
nice.
yeah, and if you have 2 or 3 homes, you get to deduct more than you've been doing for years, and it is a nice thing. And again, that benefits a lot of people. which puts more money into the economy. It's a real plus. Thumbs up again, Congress and Donald Trump for that one. You probably don't remember this. I'm not sure how long it's been gone, but you'll now be able to deduct interest on a new auto loan. And the way it's worded, I'm not sure whether it's a new auto or a new auto loan. Um,
Mm.
uh, Up to $10,000 annually in the interest on a loan. That's obviously to spur the automobile market, and that's a major part of the economy. So that's a boost to the economy because if all of a sudden now at 7% interest, 8% interest, like it may make me say, ugh. Now I can say, well, it's tax deductible, so it reduces it by whatever my tax rate is. Um, so that's good too. You know, I don't mind favoring the automobile industry because there's so many levels and tiers and so much involved in that that it's a boost for the economy without being horribly specific like we only like railroads or we only like, it's broad based. Many companies, I like it. People in Tennessee are smiling. This one is also good. It's a kindness, which is kind of a strange thing to say in economics, but for people over 65 at collecting Social Security, uh, you can deduct $6,000 of income, uh, Social Security or other income. So in essence, the first you get to reduce the tax burden that you have on your Social Security checks because you do pay taxes on Social Security checks. So again, there are income limits to that, but in general, people who are just trying to get by on Social Security, they're not paying the tax anyways. Other people where they're more middle and they're getting some benefit from Social Security, they're just going to get a little more benefit from Social Security. And I think the kindness is there. You've paid in all your working life, and to not have it, the fact that it's taxed irritates me to begin with. So it's like, it's just some people who are trying to get by, it helps them some. Is it a big deal? No, but at that level, anything is a help, right? So it's a good thing. So I think we just had a few good things in a row that we could say, job well done. We're going to increase the child tax credit by 10% from $2,000 to $2,200. When you were a child, it was $400. So
It's come along.
it's come a long way since you were a child. That's right. And if you have one child, it's, you've reduced your taxes by $200. If you have six children, you've reduced your taxes by $1,200. Simple math. But it adds up, it matters, and it's something in the right direction for individuals. Uh, and it is expensive raising children, as you well know. So any help is a nice help. So we'll take that. I like this one a lot. This is something that the savings accounts for kids. I think if I remember right, the government will provide $1,000, the first $1,000. I could be wrong on that, so listeners, check that out. So that per child, you will be able to open up a savings account, and I think the government does kickstart it. And then every year you can contribute up to $5,000 annually tax-free into the child's account. So it's a nice way to build a nest egg up until they're 18 years of age, where if you have the wherewithal for $500 or $5,000, you can save a nest egg for your kid's college, car, wedding, whatever you want. It's all tax-free. And I thought that really encourages savings and encourages a look to the future. And uh, it's, it comes at a cost, obviously, to taxpayers, but in the meantime is good for families and for kids. So it's hard to argue against that one too, right? It's got really some nice things going, and the private school vouchers up to what is it? Looking over here, $5,000. And includes homeschoolers. Now the catch there is the family income can be no more than three times the median local income.
Got
So
it.
here it's about $60,000. So if your family earns less than $180,000 a year, you can get $5,000 per child to homeschool or send to private school your child. Private school is very expensive. That's going to help. $5,000 for homeschool covers the bill.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden it's like, well, thanks. That's a recognition, I think, that there are alternative paths. And why this one works for me mathematically is because the cost of having a child in the classroom if you
Mm.
broke it down on per capita basis, is greater than $5,000. So it's
Yeah.
not a bad thing. There will be people who don't like it, but overall, I think we're on another, this is a good thing. All right. So we like that. We're going to find more money being spent on defense, a lot more money being spent on defense. And as there's a lot more money being spent on defense, all kinds of defense contractors are going to benefit, whether it's hardware, software. One thing that Frank, your husband, would particularly like, I think, and I think Brian, my other son-in-law, will particularly like, is it includes 25 billion for a golden dome. Now, you remember the Iron Dome, it still exists in Israel. This is a golden dome to protect the United States. And we've seen how well it works against a lot of missiles in Israel. We're obviously a much bigger country, so to cover the United States borders is not an easy task. This is actually something Ronald Reagan talked about many, many years ago. And to see it come around again, it's like, in an age where drones come in, it won't stop a drone. But if a ballistic missile's coming in, I'm not sure it'll get ballistic missiles. I'd have to check with your brother on that. But there are other missiles that Iran launched into Israel that it did catch. And some you let fall to the ground because it's only going to hit a cornfield and not a house or something. And others, they just shot them out of the sky. And so it helps security, national security, and it provides for jobs in those national defense contractors who'll be receiving money for defense. And it's not just the Golden Dome, it's for lots of things, including a soft benefit of 7.5 billion for quality of life improvement for the military, for housing and healthcare, childcare, education. So it's a nice thing. And I think a really overdue thing, if you look at how many people in the military need public assistance, it's shameful to me. If you can't
Mm.
make a living serving your country, then there's something wrong. And this is a step towards fixing that. So again, I think it deserves credit for what it's doing here. Now, there'll be people who go, defense spending doesn't need to be increased. We just need to make cuts in areas and save money because we're spending money on, $6,000 for a hammer. There's no such thing as spending $6,000 on the hammer. That's just hiding what they're actually spending it on. So everybody that's not a moron knows that. I mean, it's just nobody in the Pentagon's going, yeah, this is a golden hammer. This is great. Pretty stupid. Come on, give me a break. But are there places where we should be doing cuts? Yeah, absolutely. But these things I just said are not wrong. They're needed. And it doesn't replace the fact that Washington should be looking to make the cuts that are needed in the military because there is waste. Every part of business, there's waste, right? Every part of government, there's waste. So we call it the basset hound in the old days. Look for the basset hounds and take them for a walk to the farm and let them roam free over there. So far you can tell I'm pretty excited about this. Now, one that is needed but is very touchy is more money for border security.
Mm.
And I got to look at the amount of money so I don't get it wrong. $50 billion for completing the wall on the southern border. Lots of pluses and minuses there. This is this is emotional. So let's deal from an economic point of view. $50 billion being spent on labor and materials to build the wall. Whether you like the wall or not, that's adding federal money into the economy, which provides for jobs and for some economic benefit for those states along the southern border. Ironically, Joe was telling me this, that we had built a wall in Arizona, at least partially wall in Arizona in the previous Trump term, and the Arizona changed their view of life with the last election, and the wall's being taken apart. So this would put
Oh,
the wall back.
oh.
Should have left the wall. That was. So whether you like the wall or not, there is a positive economic benefit, and you can make an economic benefit for the wall in terms of stopping the illegal flow, or you can make a humanitarian argument that that's not the right thing to do. That's not what you and I are about here today, so we're just gonna kind of gloss over all that. One thing that's hard sell from a humanitarian point of view is $45 billion to build new detention centers. Uh, Again, from an economic point of view only, I have to have no heart and soul in this one, okay? Just that means construction companies, that means people that are supplying concrete and metals and everything else, wiring, all of that. That's money being spent that's going to create economic movement. So it's good from that point of view. I'm going to leave it just at that point of view so we don't get down the road of social thinking and all the rest of that. So all that money going into the economy does have some benefit to some local economies, to some individuals, and that sort of thing. The making permanent the 2017 tax cuts brings a lot of relief to a lot of people that were worried about the tax rates going up after 2025. So there's some stability there, and we know that uncertainty is the enemy of the economy. So all of a sudden the uncertainty's gone, and this is just going to be the way it is for at least through 2028. So it's like, okay, we can roll with this. This is good. Uh, Now, what we know though is that there with this cost, there's some losses. So you got to raise taxes in other areas or cut money in other areas, right? Now, one of the things that the president is doing is going after large endowment funds for universities or colleges that have over 3,000 students. And the larger the endowment fund, the more you have to pay tax on that endowment. Now, the first thing that popped in my mind is he probably had Harvard painted on the wall and throwing. Is it wrong? That's a moral question. And we don't need to debate that, but that will be a source of revenue to the federal government as we go forward. What we're also going to know is that there's going to be cost savings in Medicaid. Now, not Medicare, that's different than Medicaid. And here it's in talking with people, there's an agreement, I think almost universally, yeah, there's fraud in Medicaid. There are lots of people who are getting Medicaid that don't deserve to get Medicaid. They're gaming the system. They either grew up on it, so they know how to game it, or they figured it out. And there are stories that can be found on the internet of fraud that has gone on in Medicaid. So to reduce the amount of spending on Medicaid as a statement is not wrong. To potentially impact 11 point something million people with a blunt object, that's the part that makes me nervous as a human being.
Yeah.
Uh, I, I, I don't want to give false accreditation, but somebody said, why not take all the new IRS agents that Biden hired and make them now Medicaid inspectors? So they have to go out and do case studies and see who deserves it and who doesn't. I mean, they don't lose their jobs. They're just doing something different. It's number crunching, is visiting and such. So the concept will save the government lots of money. I just hope, and as a human being, that it doesn't cost people who really need their Medicaid. That would be
Yeah.
an unkind country that does that. Uh, but it is a cost saving. So we don't mind that as we go forward. SNAP, which is, we used to call that food stamps, is being cut at the federal level, which is going to save a lot of money, which means it all falls on the states now. So if the states are going to provide food stamps, every state's going to be raising taxes or cutting other programs in order to continue food stamps. I don't see food stamps going away. There may be stricter recommendations or requirements, would be a better word. But that's how they're doing at the federal level, which is saying, we're not doing that anymore. That's your problem. They're your people. And so our governor and every governor is going to have to work with the legislature to go, how do we fund this? Because to be a sitting governor and to say we're not going to do food stamps anymore will make some people cheer, other people cry, could make enough people angry that you're not going to get reelected, especially if you're in a fairly conservative state. You may get reelected, and if you're in a very more liberal state, you'll never get reelected if you cut food stamps. So it's very much state dependent, but that is a savings to the federal government. Rolling back green energy things, for instance, the $7,000 credit for buying electric car gone. This may get me in trouble. I say good.
Say it.
I say good. If the thing's not worth buying without government help, then it's not worth buying. And if it's that important to you to have an electric car, then pay the darn $7,000. It's that important to you. It shouldn't be up to me to subsidize your desire for an electric car. That's, and if it doesn't make sense financially, then don't make me do it. And that it's as simple as that. And when they become financially and systematically and infrastructure feasible, I'm not against them in any way. I don't like lithium batteries. There are new batteries that will be come out that are better lithium or other than lithium, because lithium batteries don't go away. They just go up in flames. So it's just but the reality here is that I'll put this one in the good column because I don't think it's my job to subsidize a very specific niche, because the government thinks we should all be moving to electric vehicles, which is environmentally unfriendly, where the batteries are made, where the batteries are processed, and so forth. And at the end of their life, you have these lithium batteries that you need to somehow recycle, which is very expensive, and it's a mess. So what's the big downside? Well, the big downside here is not pleasant, in that the big downside is that this will increase the federal deficit, depends on who you talk to, either by 3.4 to 3.7 trillion dollars over 10 years. Now, that means that as a percent of our GDP, is going to go from today's 114% to 124%. That's a big deal. Uh, that does not affect a single baby boomer. Doesn't. It's easy for us to vote for this bill. Yes, that's exactly right.
Hi.
Hi. And add 10 years, and Chloe and Kenzie and Ellie and Abby, they'll all be working. So it impacts
Next
them
year.
too. Next year. Well, yeah, but she won't be paying taxes really until later. But the reality is it passes. It's a lollipop today that gets paid for later. And you know how I feel about debt and the federal debt. And if there's something that's going to hurt this country, that could be our blind spot. And for people to think it doesn't matter because most of the debt is owned by U.S. individuals and other parts of the government, it does matter. Um, I'll explain why, if I may. I've done this before, and most people don't think about it, but I think the logic holds. You let me know if you disagree.
Yeah.
Chinese government is not our largest foreign holder of debt. Japan is, but right behind them is China. Now, Japan has said, "Hey, folks, just so you know, we're going to have to start selling debt because we need to fund our government so that we can pay for all of our seniors because we don't have children anymore." The birth rate is so small that there's an aging population, and they're either going to use AI, robotics, or move manufacturing offshore. So where's the money going to come from? And they have said, we're going to have to start selling this massive amount of U.S. treasuries slowly so we don't hurt you. And that's the key. Slowly so we don't hurt you. Now, this is not original to me, but I like repeating it. If China decides one fine day, Xi Jinping decides one day that you know what, let's fire a shot across their bow, being the United States. Let's sell 5% of our U.S. Treasuries. Let's sell 10% of our U.S. Treasuries. That will send a signal that we can dump these suckers. We don't care if we take a discount on these. We don't care if we take a loss in these suckers, because what that will do is it'll make the world, oh no, my gosh, what happens if they sell them all? And that will cause people to run. Now, if they decide to sell them all, it's a bomb going off. If they just make people nervous, it causes them to run. Now, if they start running from the dollar, that weakens the dollar. We'll talk about that another time, what a weaker dollar means and the strengthening dollar and how that all works. But on the heading of debt, because we have given them this bomb, here, thanks for giving us the money. In return, we're going to give you a bomb. Uh, they could sink our economy unless the government decides all of a sudden our bonds are worthless. And if our bonds are worthless, then nobody's going to want to buy the ones that China is selling. But if we declare our bonds are worthless, then who's going to buy our bonds the next day when we need to continue to finance the deficit because our budget is unbalanced? So we have all of a sudden created a catch-22 where we can say, you know what, those bonds are worthless. And then somebody in Switzerland is going to go, you know what, you guys are worthless. I'll buy a German bond, thank you very much. I'll buy a Canadian bond, even better. So we run the risk by increasing the deficit to make it a bigger bomb. And I think your generation's biggest task is going to be to deal with the deficit. And it's going to be a hard job because you're going to be going, like a lot of this does, some of this does anyways, that's not our job. We're the federal government. That's not our job. You know, we do we need and this will be politically radioactive too. Do we need at the federal level, a Department of Education, or is that the state job? Right? We've talked about that. What do
Yeah.
we need? What do we need doing at the federal level that's actually a state job? Now, should there be a Department of Commerce only in that it deals with interstate travel and foreign commerce, so that there's unity in that? But there are so many other things where we don't need it. A friend of mine, his first name's Peter, and I won't give his last name, started his own business, was very successful, decided to give back. And as he decided to give back, he said, you know what? I'm going to go work for the government. So he got a job as an assistant secretary within the Department of Commerce. And he worked under the George W. Bush administration. Then he worked under the Obama administration, part of each. And he said, talk about two very different people, he says, and two
Mm.
very different way of handling things, and two very intelligent people. He says, and he sat at tables with both of them, holding discussions on what's going on in commerce, and with others. And he said one thing didn't change from Bush. There was something going on, and under Obama, something was going on, and nothing changed under either one, despite their varying different views of the world. And that is the waste that was going on in the Department of Commerce. He says there's duplication upon duplication because there's fiefdoms within fiefdoms within fiefdoms, and nobody wants to give up their power. Nobody wants to give up their prestige. Nobody wants to give up their authority. So it's not just duplicated, it's triplicated and quadrupled
Mm.
across agencies. He says, could you imagine the savings at the federal level if we managed to rein that in? And I said, what are the chances? He said, none, because nobody at the top has got the will to do it. And within, there's no incentive to do it. As a matter of fact, it's the opposite. We don't have zero-based budgeting where you have to justify your entire budget every year. So it's a long-winded discussion on debt, but we're making our debt worse because we're not taking care of the efficiencies inside the government. And if you do that, because I can't, if you do that when you're in Congress, you're going to find, I think because of the 2030s and the Depression, you're going to find people are going to listen and they're going to go, you know what, that makes sense. Not those old boomers are gone.
I'll just play back these episodes.
So big, beautiful bill. Is it big? Yes. Is it beautiful in some ways? Sure. Is it ugly in some ways? That deficit, I can't get past it. And my fear for the Medicaid recipients that there'll be a club taken instead of a scalpel.
Mm.
That's my fear. And you'll see many studies that show this is definitely has potential for hurting lower income people more than helping. Middle class may get a marginal benefit. This is definitely geared towards helping the upper income folks greatly with the keeping tax rates the same, salt, and some other things. That this can be a real, but all things are relative. If it saves somebody who's making $5 million a year, if it saves them $50,000 over the next, X 5 years, do they notice?
Mm.
But if you're somebody who's making $50,000 a year and you get a $500 benefit, you notice.
Mm.
So at the top they're going to go, nice. Yeah, I always like more money, but I think this thing is tilted the wrong way. Um, we've talked about before, and I can't stop talking about it. A flat tax is a great thing, or a fair tax is a great thing. We have a progressive income tax, which on the surface should work, but because of the way the laws are written, doesn't work very well. And I think that's probably where you can make the biggest difference as we go forward. I know I've drifted from the big, beautiful bill. Let me summarize again. Many good things, some things I don't like. Overall, will it cost the economy money? Uh, yeah, in the longer term, it will cost you money next decade. It's going to make interest rates go up. It's going to make the amount of payments go up from the budget so that the payment of interest rates will be even more than defense than it is now, and it'll encroach upon Medicare spending and all the rest of that. In the short term, it puts money in the economy, and it can be viewed as a good thing.
That's a good summary. And I was actually just talking to somebody the other day about the tax concept that you had chatted on one of our episodes about, with taxing on your spending
Yeah,
versus your earnings. And their like light bulbs went off. They're like, why aren't we doing that? It's like, because nobody's listening to him. He's not actually president yet.
that's right. Yeah, yeah. It's the fair tax. That's the fair tax, and
Yeah.
it's. I don't know, Kim. I hope you folks figure it out and get it right. Obviously, the bigger you're level-headed, you're smart, you're in business, and you've seen the world, you've traveled and all the rest of that. You know how other countries work and all the rest of that stuff. But there are so many others who are just used to the
Yes. Hand me more, please.
yes. So it'll be interesting decade. I only hope I'm rational enough to see it. I know. My biggest, concern could be is my food pureed. So, which case,
Well, I feel like you've taught all of us kids well. So if that's the case, we'll stand ready and watch for you.
all right, good, excellent.
That was a great summary. I really appreciate all the information that you shared with us during this episode. I always love hearing your perspective. It's so data driven and analytical, objective, and reasonable, and well balanced. So I really appreciate hearing your perspective on it. I was actually just talking with my in-laws over this past weekend about it. And so I said, well, we're going to be talking about it on our episode. So I'll be sure to share it with you from an economist's perspective, who's done some research and got his fingers into it and pulled it apart and see what he has to say. So I'm sure there are many other people out there that will appreciate hearing your perspective on it too. I do have a lot of questions that came up from all this insight that you shared with us today. On the business application side, what opportunities are there for varying businesses based on what's coming out from this bill in construction, in healthcare, in senior living, and so on and so forth? So I've written them down, and in next week's episode, we will go through and do that kind of Q&A session of more of the application and opportunities for businesses with this bill being rolled out. Any
Sounds
closing
good.
remarks, Don?
No, that sounds, I'm waiting for that. That'll be fun. And I may ask you questions in return because, you deal with lots of business folks too, and deal with different companies than I have. So, we'll share some thoughts on what all this means to businesses, because it's not just, it'll be opportunities primarily. We want to keep a positive focus, but it could also be, and here's your danger, because I've thought of some dangers to companies in here too.
Yes, so I think it'll be very important for us to highlight both of those in next week's episode. So that way it will be the application and bringing it down to what about me kind of a perspective. So I'm looking forward to it. The
Yes,
next week.
next week.
Excellent. Well, thank you everyone who tuned in to listen to Alan and I on today's episode. Please feel free to like, subscribe. If you subscribe, you'll automatically be notified when these episodes are released and don't have to wait for my social posts as they come out. And looking forward to diving into the subject a little bit further in the application. So hope everybody has a great week.
Bye.